Hi, everybody.
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello.
Hey, sweet. Yeah, we were just discussing a little bit about Google I/O for anybody watching this in the chat. So many tabs open right now. My computer's fans are dying.
Oh yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. That always happens. I like open up. It's like a window, and then I add up 100 tabs, and then I open up Activity Monitor, and like my Chrome is taking up like 700% of my CPU, and then I just
Yes.
force quit everything, and then it's all back to
You guys
normal.
like use tab guys? I can't have more than like 10 tabs. I'm very OCD because I
Are you?
close them religiously, which is very weird because most people I know just have a million tabs open.
No, that's the way to do it.
I'm
Do you have
surprised.
just one window?
Yeah, no, I do have multiple windows. So this is why I love the Magic Mouse because I can swipe through. So that's how I usually have a Jelly Pod like a profile, then I have a personal profile, etc. So that's how I compartmentalize stuff.
Right. You're a Magic Mouse fan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Me
I mean, I
too.
just like the double swipe. That's like what gets me. Otherwise, it's actually the quality isn't that good, but I just need the double swipe. So, and I don't know any other alternative to it.
That's crazy. You're the only other person I've ever met in the engineering that also likes the Magic Mouse. You know, it's
Yeah.
not the best. It has its flaws. I have one too. And I'm like, mine's about to die the battery life. It's like the original Magic Mouse, like the version 1, where
Right.
it's like still the Lightning port versus USB-C, which, bad. Why can't you just put the charging port at the top
Oh,
rather than on the bottom and make it the mouse
I
unusable
know.
when you're charging? But I like it. I've used it for the last like 10, maybe 10 years. I don't know. Whenever it first came out, I was like, I want this thing.
I don't know. People have this very specific like preferences. Like I don't know how they do it. Like I had a buddy who had the keyboard with the split keyboard. I was like, how does that like how do you even work? Like I tried typing and I was like, what? Like this is like homework now. Like I like something that came naturally to me is completely shut down now, you know. Same
Totally.
with the Vim guys. We had this huge Vim debate. I was like, I don't know how. Maybe it's like type 2 fun versus type 1 fun. You have to just go through a pain, but I just refuse to. I'm like, what? Come on. Like, I just need to do the
Totally.
thing.
Totally. I remember in college, like there was this, everything was in Emacs, at least for this like one lab, and I was like, why? I've never touched Emacs since college, and everyone's like Vim fans, but Emacs was just such a pain on all these commands. If you're a power user on like all those keyboard shortcuts,
Yeah.
you're a beast. But I mean,
Yes.
I
Well,
mean,
Command C, Command V.
yeah. I'm like, I'm,
yeah.
I'm I'm learning all the commands in linear right now, so I can go through all these things and link issues and boom, 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 boom.
Oh yeah, you're a linear power user.
I'm trying to get in
You have
there.
a fellow Magic Mouse fan.
Oh, nice.
Shout out Malcolm.
Malcolm.
Magic
And
Mouse.
also, hello, Blake from New Mexico. Nice to see you writing in. I was just chatting with Blake over intercom.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw that. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mouse is clean. It's really fun to use until you have to charge it for the first time,
Yeah.
and then you just never use it again.
I'm like working. I'm in the middle of a meeting, and it's like mouse is about to die. And at least on the Mac, it only shows right before it's about to die. It's like 1% or 2% left. Like,
Yeah.
why don't you just give me a warning like an hour ago versus right before it's gonna die?
Yeah. It's crazy.
um,
Hopefully we'll just be talking and using our brains
right,
directly
right.
soon. So we won't need these abstractions.
Linked up, linked
Right.
up. But well, today, yeah, I would love everyone throw in the chat where you're calling in from or where you're joining from. It'd be super cool. We just love to see it because sometimes the people from Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the East Coast, West Coast, everywhere. So it's just cool for us to share where you guys are calling in from. And
And there's often like a big spike. Sometime I remember one time we had a big spike from Dubai. Remember that, or from the
Right.
UAE. So it's funny that you just get like a bunch of people all show up from. I wonder, how the algorithm is doing this stuff, but
Right.
very cool. And it's kind of on topic as far as like where are people joining from, because oh yeah, one more shout here. Malcolm, the Mac fan, is from Atlanta, Georgia. Hot Atlanta, as they say. But what was I saying? Oh yeah. So we also had a bit, our users had a big question about, where are people joining from? Where are people listening from? So Bilal shipped out a incredible feature over the last, week or two. It's been called Podcast Analytics. So now whenever you create a podcast or if you have an existing one, go ahead and turn on the analytics setting. It's at the bottom next to the unlisted or public toggle. And that enables you to track your listeners. And one of those things that you can track is where are they listening from? US, Spain, France. Those are the ones where I'm getting listens at least.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see, viewers from all over the world. It makes you feel like, I think, especially as a creator, it motivates you. Like, wow, this guy halfway across the world. He took some time out of his day to listen to me.
Right.
So
Totally. Well, let's dig into those a little bit, like on the analytics front. So, like, what does it give you? Like,
oh yeah, can we share a screenshot? Maybe,
Yeah,
I don't
let's
know
do
if it's possible there.
sure.
Are you sharing or am I sharing?
Oh, I thought you had, but
Oh, who's going to share?
Oh, I don't have it up. I don't have it up right now.
let me see if I can. Well, oh, I don't have a lot of data, but I guess I can.
Yeah. While Bilal and Jason pull it up. And so yeah, so Blake over here. Yeah. So in the left hand side of on the sidebar, there's going to be a analytics toggle on. I forget off the top of my head. Will that always appear there even if we don't have any podcast with analytics toggled on, or right
Oh,
here?
sorry, I missed your question.
So will the analytics sidebar button right here, will that show for everybody? Is there something
Yes.
to turn that on?
Yeah, it'll show. It'll just but you'll have to toggle on in edit podcast, or when you create a podcast, you have to toggle on the analytics so it starts collecting the data. And this is my screen, which is very bare bones, but because I haven't, I have a bunch of like podcasts which haven't gotten a lot of listens because they were just test podcasts. But you can imagine like a nice cool graph here. You can see downloads for the last 30 days, 7 days. You can see the platforms, which are platforms. So Spotify, Apple could show up here, if you add them there. And then the top episodes and the geography, as we talked about, where people coming from. So this is mostly me.
Right.
Which is why.
And then also can you show the on a particular podcast the toggle that people should be turning on?
Yes.
So we chose to not
go
make
back.
this default on.
Let's go to this one. And then if you go to edit podcasts, it's the one down here. So, if you can toggle that on and off, it will make, analytics. And, you can learn more here with the question mark tooltip. But yeah, this is how you turn it out. It's turned on by default for new podcasts, but you can turn it off, etc.
But for all the existing episode podcasts, just want to shout out for everyone who has already made podcasts before. It'll be default off.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that everyone who wasn't aware of this feature would opt in themselves, since there's privacy implication of tracking those listeners. So so if you want your analytics, go ahead and find that podcast, edit it, turn it on. But analytics will only come in from the moment you start tracking it. So you're not going to get like a sudden burst of your old analytics. So don't be alarmed if you see that the last 30 days there's been no one listening to it. It's because we weren't tracking it.
Yeah, and it'll take a couple of days for the analytics to collect enough to show something. So I mean, if you don't see something immediately, just give it a few days.
Right. And so on the analytics side, are you able to see like what platforms they're coming from, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube?
Yeah, you should be able to see the big providers, etc.
Cool.
And like for mine, it said Chrome and Safari, which is something I know we talked about yesterday, and something I want to learn more about, like what exactly that entails, because but you should be able to see Spotify, Apple, etc., which are the big providers.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So analytics are pretty much all rolled out. Do we see, I mean, in the future, I guess we're going to listen to everybody what they're like using analytics for. I know just from a visibility standpoint, that's super important because I know
Right.
Jason, you talk to people all the time in the chat and support, and people are kind of, I don't know, they want to know where their listeners are from, like who's listening to my podcast. It's pretty exciting. At least it's super exciting for me when I go on to analytics and I see that a podcast that I created has like 10 listeners in some random country that, halfway across the world. And it's like, whoa, how did they find this? Why are they listening to it? And it's exciting for me, like, oh, well, I have 20 listeners on my podcast I created with JellyPod. Maybe I'll create a new one, and then that one's going to have 30 listeners next week or 40. And they're growing too. I mean, like, if you create episode one and episode one only has like one or two listeners, maybe even zero listeners, you create another episode, then you create another one. It's not like
Mhm.
those old episodes go away. So as you create more, people like your episodes and they'll go back and listen to previous ones. So I think it's a pretty cool growth channel for any marketers and like business owners out there that really they want to measure the impact of podcasting as a new marketing channel. When I'm out there like communicating with people, like telling people what JellyPod does, honestly, my first, like I say, we're AI podcast studio, and the follow up, pretty much that I say is like we help businesses and creators um, generate podcasts and expand their media presence through AI generated podcasts, and that usually invokes some level of curiosity, like wait, expand media presence, business owners, AI generated podcasts, and that usually digs into a few other questions like, are you saying they're two AIs talking to each other, and that's like their brains get blown? And then you kind of talk about like the impact there, and it's pretty cool because, I mean, you can see a lot of businesses and a lot of businesses are using JellyPod for that reason,
Mhm.
to create podcasts.
Yeah.
Write
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's super powerful.
That is
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah, no, I've definitely it's super cool seeing the evolution of, as we continue to grow and we have more and more active customers, um, sort of the needs evolve and the pluralities of what people are doing. I feel like
Right.
at first it was just people who were more curious about like, ooh, what can be done, but now people seem to be coming with more distinct goals. Totally. I mean, just what I think about is I just had an awesome call earlier. I think it was late last week with the Global Chess Academy. We've talked about this guy before, but I finally got the chance to chat with him, and it's an incredible story. I mean, he's a grandmaster. He's like a top like 1,800 players in the world or something.
Hmm.
Um, and he started a global chess academy that serves over 30 countries. And he's using podcasts at a two-pronged approach. He's using it for top of funnel awareness. He does like a chess news podcast. There's only like a handful of them on Spotify. But then for his active students, he creates these tournament tips podcasts where on their drive into a tournament or when they're walking in through the front doors, they're playing his voice, telling them, in the final 5 minutes before your round, what should you be thinking about? And I think that's super cool, like a way to almost scale yourself, not only to reach, new customers, but also to reach, people trying to do something in the real world. It's kind of a cool multi-pronged approach.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
It's just like there's so many angles to creating podcasts, from learning to just getting your word out, starting a community, etc.
Totally. And I think that's the key. I think I want to drill down onto that real quick too. The people that at least I find have the most success with JellyPod are individuals with some unique niche insight or passion. Chess podcasting or chess. He's a chess grandmaster. Or last week we talked about our friend, the virtual psychiatrist. And these people that, have domain expertise in some area that they 100% are capable of going to a recording studio, recording a podcast, editing it, and distributing that. And it's 100% possible. And that would be awesome as well. And this is just an avenue to scale that process to make it easier for those people with domain expertise, with niche interests to create something that they could totally do, but it's probably just the barrier of entry is, you know, too high and
Right.
too hard
Hmm.
to do that consistently over time. And I think that's the people that are really seeing a lot of success and growth in the content that they create on JellyPod are people with, you know, domain expertise and niche interests.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to get content right, especially when it's in your voice. I mean, as someone that's always making YouTube videos, you'd be like, I don't post the outtakes, but like, you know, there's a certain thing that you want to say, and it might take you, you know, 7 or 8 times to say it
Totally.
the way you want to say it. And you know, with like a live podcast, you end up saying it, and then afterwards you hear, you're like, did I really mean to say that? Like you're kind of on the spot, right? And you might misspeak, and then you're like, oh no, that can't. I just said the opposite of what's true. I can't have that get out there, right? And then you have to go, and then you can't edit it, or you can remove it, but you can't change what you said unless
Mm.
it's a simple, like, you know, remove a knot or add a knot.
Right.
But like it can be a challenge. So it's like there's something to it where it's like you lose this sort of like banter, this like sort of randomness, I guess, but you get the message. And oftentimes people who are going on to these you know, when you make a podcast, you have a message that you're trying to get out into the world.
Right.
And saying that just the way you want it is huge.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like we did a few weeks ago, but I think randomly think about partial regeneration as such a like cool feature because that Pearson added that, because you can do that exactly like the two lines that got messed up, in the whole flow. You can just go and just edit those and get perfect. So
Right. And you can like I like to imagine a world where the cost of producing the cost of AI comes down so dramatically that inference and audio generation becomes essentially cheap enough where on demand, imagine not having to click generate audio where we can just kind of understand your changes and just like how history is recorded in a document, we can kind of undo semantic like content chunks. Like imagine if you're just typing and the audio gets generated in the background and it's automatically syncs and everything kind of happens without a button click, which would also be pretty cool. Very far down the future, don't even know if we'll ever get there. But the text-based editing approach is very declarative. Like I'm not a video editor, Jason's not a video editor, and Bilal's not a video editor either. But it's very easy for us to conceptualize editing something by just changing the text and what we want to say versus like clipping and stretching and all these things. So that's kind of why we always went towards that text-based approach where we just have the transcript. You just make a change to the transcript, and everything kind of is derived from the words that your AI hosts are.
yeah, and then we add dials for you to personalize it. Like you added, I don't know if we talked about, but you can like really now even generate the speed. So you can go on a chunk, and you want it to make it sound a little quick based on the you can just select a dial, and you can make it sound a little quicker, which makes the naturalness of the conversation even more real life. And we'll be adding probably more dials to that. So
Right.
you can really like control it, more granularly and get the ebb and flow just the way you want it.
And how can a user? I mean, how do people change the speed of?
Yeah, there's a filter icon. Yeah, I forget the icon name, the handlebar. But if you go to any block, you should see that. And if you click it, it should show host speeds, slow, normal, fast, and you should be able to pick it. And it's rare. You can select the speaker as well based on who you have.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's a pretty cool ability to do that. We'll probably add more stuff there, so you can like control those dials, and
Right.
just really get it just right. And so if you guys have ideas about what kind of things you encounter as you're editing the transcript, maybe you want it to sound more emotional or loud or etc etc, please let us know. We're always looking to make it more as perfect as possible for you guys.
Right. And that's a cool thing to say here because I mean we have an opinion that the best experience for users is one that is great by default and options are hidden away so that a beginner user isn't overwhelmed by dials and changes and selections. But for the advanced users, they exist. So I could totally see in the future where on that speak block, when you're making a change to the speed, you have a text box and you say, make this faster,
Hmm.
that a tool call or something, or even change actually the way of how that sentence is spoken. So maybe speak this line and as if you just inhaled a balloon of helium,
Hmm.
or like add in some higher order descriptions and prompts to actually how that is sounded,
Yeah.
how that's pronounced or something. That could be cool. I mean, just throwing out brainstormed ideas here. So
Yeah.
that's my wacky wish list item. So
Yeah.
Love a wacky wish list.
Yeah, I think that is the like what you're saying is like pick some great defaults and but then also have this like optionality to choose from because
right,
one thing I personally I if I see a million dials my brain freezes. I'm like, oh, I don't
brain
know. And
freezes.
so I like this is why we talk about Apple versus Google. I love I'm an Apple fanboy in terms of hardware because they just select good defaults. They don't I don't need to customize my widget or whatever. I just need the thing to work. But at the same time, when once you get familiar, then you start, going like, oh, well, it would be cool if I could just, maybe lower this or make this a little tweak this here and there. So
Right.
having those both things kind of available in a nice ways, I think crucial for any good platform.
Yeah, totally. And I know I see something here from Eric about increasing the banter between hosts.
Hmm.
So for anyone new to the live stream today, or maybe seeing JellyPod for the first time, one of the core things that we do is allow you as a user to come into JellyPod and create your perfect hosts, your perfect AI hosts. And that process includes creating the name, giving them a backstory, and then selecting a voice. Voice selection, we give you a few hundred voices to choose from. You can also clone your own voice or design a voice from your host backstory. So there's 3 core points when creating host: name, backstory, and voice selection. The backstory influences um, the transcript, and it influences how that speaker communicates with other hosts, how that speaker talks. And so Eric here, he's asking, how can we make the AI hosts banter a little bit more? And the key way to do this, the key way to make a host do anything, is to give them some more descriptions in their backstory. So just put in the backstory, this host likes to argue. This host likes to be funny and have funny banter. This host is an expert versus this host maybe is a novice in topics. And that's really a core part of what can make a podcast great, is editing that backstory. So just give that a try and hopefully that works for you. If you want a specific episode to do something a little bit differently, put it into the outline. Say Eric goes into, or I guess Eric here, Eric goes into more depth onto this topic in this chapter, or Eric asks a lot of questions in this chapter. So yeah, so I
Totally. It's that depth piece is huge. This is something that I see come up all the time. So just beyond style, some people want to see more banter, but a lot of people love JellyPod because it's not so fluffy. They like that it kind of gets to the meat and potatoes, and that can often be influenced by, say you're making a medical podcast that is going to be diving into some latest research. You might want to say that this person is, a PhD microbiologist, right? And then they're going to use terminology that is in depth. They're not going to gloss over certain details that
Right.
they would if you just said they're a 25-year-old podcaster from, wherever. So every little detail matters, especially in the backstory.
Right, right. And I think that, like, I know that people familiar with AI tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Grok, prompting is a very core, it's a new verb, I think, for a lot of people over the last few years. Like the concept of prompting something didn't really exist before ChatGPT. Um, in JellyPod, we don't really use the term prompt because it's more of like you're going and setting up these things. So even though you have a chat box that looks very familiar to ChatGPT, when you first log in, you'll see just like a chat box that says, "Hey, talk about what you want to create or add a link." It's not really prompting as much as like giving information. You have like host creation, you have the source uploading, and you have podcast creation. At no point, at least yet, do we have really this concept of prompting. It's more of like, hey, you create a host, you create an episode, and you add information there, you add a backstory, you add these things, and we behind the scenes, generate those prompts, and we do all the magic to kind of incorporate what you've given us and to create something great from what you've provided. So that's kind of like at
Yeah.
least the way that we like to think about it.
Yeah, I mean it's like very declarative in a way because I
Mhm.
think the way we want like we you put in the sources, the input, the data, and with the backstories, and we're gonna this is something we'll hopefully we'll expand on soon. But the host's backstory and gives you the personality on how they can take that data and transform it into a script, and it's almost like landing like in a garden. You're like, okay, this is my source material. Now what do I get based on the personality and the input, the
Right.
data, etc.
Right. It's
Totally. But to give you just to answer the question really quickly, like some of the ones that I like to use, if I want banter, I'll say like speaks in short, punchy sentences and is very funny. Or I'll say goes very in depth on technical material and does not gloss over details, things like that. Especially when it comes to like AI content, it can be really easy for AI related content for it to try and speak to everybody. So by giving it these extra little bits here in the backstory, it'll usually turn out better.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, like we've been in discussion internally. Sometimes, so we have like these two roadmaps. I think a little bit, whereas like things that we'll talk about on this, some things that we'll just hide. Once in a while, we'll just share. I'm not the type of person that thinks ideas are worth that much. They're worth something, but they're not worth like too much. And so, host memory is something that we've thought about, where a host over time, if you use that same host or across a series, that they can actually recall beyond a certain episode that they're used in right then. So, for example, if you have episode 1 and it's a car podcast, episode 1 talks about, let's say, Ferraris, and episode 2 talks about Lamborghinis. um, Episode 2 could kind of reflect back on episode 1 and sort of like this memory, have some memory there. Not something that we're actively working on this week or maybe in the near future, but something that we're thinking about, something that we think is going to be really cool as well. So as you create more, those hosts get more memory, understand the preferences of you as a creator, and all of the above. So keep an eye out for that. We'll make sure that that's available to everybody as soon as possible.
And it's funny because you said like, oh, we ideas are more, and I agree with that. But it's funny because I think Jason was talking about how some of our competitors are kind of maybe tuning in to these live streams. So hi guys, if you are looking for ideas,
Right. If you're
we don't
looking,
mind. It's an abundant world out there. So
it's abundant
we're
world.
flattered you're listening in.
Not a
Yeah. And
not a
that
winner's-
reminds me, also my uncle is probably watching. So hello. Hi, Kadil.
That'd be hilarious. Yeah. No, it's super interesting. I mean, I think we live in a world where right now there are just so many things to work on. It's so cool. Like if everybody watching this live stream got access to our roadmap, got access to all these issues and bugs and all these things, we have high priority things. Bugs are number one. So everybody out there that has had some issues over the last week or so, there is a big overhaul coming out soon that just addresses all those little bugs, and we're trying to get them out as fast as possible because it's frustrating for everybody. So don't worry, that's number one priority. But number two, beyond core issues, there are just so many things to build, and it's super exciting. I think for me, for Jason, for Bilal. I don't know how you guys feel, but I wish there was 10 copies of me, and that's what makes me so excited for like the agents, the software engineering agents, where I could just like shoot off prompts and be like, do this, and I just review. So hopefully that works one day, so I can make copies of myself. but there's too many things to build, too many ideas that we have.
True. Yeah, that's the journey, and it's exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of the just the agent building stuff, I recently saw this chart. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. I should have posted it in random. I forgot to. But the director of engineering at Meta plotted like the amount of time spent repairing AI bugs and bugs introduced by AI. Have you seen this?
Mm-mm.
And found like basically he had identified that like the optimal place is at around 45 to 50% of your work is done by AI. It's like it was like the optimal point where there were no bugs introduced by the AI and it minimized your bugs to the maximum it could. And then everything from there. So he basically like rationalized that half of work that's being done right now is sort of this like easily automatable kind of structural framework based work, and then the other half is like more of the higher level systems thinking, the problem solving, the more edge casey stuff,
Right.
that you just can't offload. So if you do too much, then the AI introduces too much, and if you do too little, then you introduce too many bugs, which I thought was a cool.
Right.
It's cool that there's like a symbiosis at right around 50%.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, which also, I mean, I think would change even in the next couple of months. It's going
Right.
to change because it's like that's the thing about AI and looking at past data. It's just like, even looking at last year, you'd be looking at GPT 3.5, which is like is so different than what we have today.
Totally.
So,
What I'm just so excited about, and I know we're like kind of right at time too, just imagining a world where most 99% of my job is reviewing PRs of AI agents, where it's like I go in there, I add comments, I submit
it's
my
funny is that because most people say that's the least favorite part of a software engineer's job is reviewing someone else's team.
right. I know. I mean, I think so, but like, because you love writing code, you like creating.
Yeah.
But I think like as a engineering manager, as somebody that's a little bit higher level, it's like if the AI can go out and write these things for me, this code, and I just be like, hey, this is wrong here, or can you do this another way, and just add some comments, submit that, and it goes off and fixes it. It comes back to me asynchronously. It's like having almost copies of myself.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool. I mean, at the end of the day, like a CTO of a company, all that does is like reviews the outputs of their direct reports, and those direct reports review the outputs of their direct reports. And it's like now we could have kind of AI agents that report to us through an interface that already exists. So I don't know. The world's changing pretty fast, and
Yeah.
AI podcasting is, it's going to be impacted. So
I agree. Exciting times, And
So-
so I, in a way, I like this, like the way the modern world, like the time is not is relative, and so I think there's some stats about how 1 year today is actually equivalent to like 10 years, let's say 20 years ago or something, and that ratio changes a lot. So in a way, we're living speed running time, and so in the next 6 months could be the equivalent of 5 years. From 2015 to 2020, and when you put it in that context, it really messes with your head, because when you think of timelines and stuff, we're thinking about 5 years from now and stuff. That 1 year is not the 1 year we had before.
Right.
So
me and Pearson have actually riffed on this, and but the different like you totally are speed running time, but because we live in a competitive environment, if everyone can do things faster, then in a way it sort of slows everybody down. It's less important. So we talked about this like hypothetical 2-month amount of time that like 10 years ago you could do less, but everyone could do less. So where you were expected, what made you great in 2 months time? Sorry, I'm struggling to put this eloquently.
Right.
Pearson, what was the like?
Essentially, the concept here is that like in the past, in the concept of startup advice, the past was like, hey, move fast, break things, get the basic V0 out as quickly as possible, even though it looks, maybe like complete trash. And I think that mentality is still great, but more so it was like, okay, there's some number of months, some number of time that is expected to go from 0 to 1, to that first product that you can ship to users, that first feature. Back then, let's say that took 2 months to do. What you can do in 2 months today is so much more, so that what users and what you should throw out in the world should just be that much better. It should still take you the week, the month, the 2 months to deploy that first feature. But the expectations of what you should be able to accomplish in that time are orders of magnitude more. Your thing should look polished. Your thing should look great. I mean, yes, you still have to move fast, and it's okay to be rough around the edges. But users today, unlike users 10, 20 years ago, they have much higher expectations of software products and things they interact with. So it should be still that you as a individual business or creator should still probably spend enough time to make sure that the thing that you're producing is, great, but just use the tools at your advantage to
the bar just keeps getting higher, and you just gotta
exactly. So in a way, time is constant.
Yeah.
Time
well,
is almost
I think
like
the way I wasn't
limit.
approaching it from a point of a competitive edge. I was thinking of more as just what we can done. Like basically, the next 6 months of Jellypod would be 2 years of Jellypod if we had started in 2018. With pre-AI or something, right? So in terms of what we can build, the features we can build, etc. With three of us, versus before maybe we needed to hire 20 people to do what we had done.
And what's super interesting about this too, it's like sometimes a first mover advantage is the first mover disadvantage. I know that's always been true in some cases, but I think more so now than ever is because you do things in the past. Like people work and operate in a way it's like, I know certain things, I don't know certain things. And then I also don't know what I don't know. It's like the unknown unknowns. And people operate in this mental model where I'm just going to do work to the best of my current ability and get that done as quickly as possible. That's how people work. But now with AI, it's like if a company a year ago did something without AI, where it's like, I did this the best way that that person can do, that they could do it as quickly as possible, they might have introduced things that were maybe not as good just because they didn't have the tooling to kind of course correct them at that moment. Whereas us, we're able, or a competitor or somebody else that starts a little bit later can use the tools to make, reduce mistakes, make it more flexible, more extensible, just by prompting like, hey, every time I write code, I just go to ChatGPT or Cursor. Like, is there a better way to do this? Is this really the best way to do it? I always ask. Like, I write the code, unless I'm 100%.
That kind of first principles thinking is so critical because I bet you it's gonna change so much. Even as I was doing a recent big feature, I was thinking about how to, because in my head, as my training is like make the code as tight as possible, DRY, don't repeat yourself. And I was thinking actually, you know what? DRY probably, and it's always been a spectrum, but even more so now today. I'm not saying we should literally have slop code, but I'm saying I'm writing not for myself. I'm writing for the AI. So if you think of from that way, having a little bit of the same code in different files actually doesn't matter because the AI is just gonna edit it anyway. So what's more important is the high level design should be simple so that I can understand it. So I bet you 5 years we're gonna have some sort of framework, cool buzzword, whatever, which is gonna be very different than the solid or whatever principles we've had the last 20 years in terms of software development and stuff. Yeah, and that's just one aspect of development. There's product. There's what does it actually look like when an AI is in the call, is in our meetings and stuff? Like, how do you actually approach tasks? How do you break it down? How do you execute on them? What is the most effective way possible? So it's very interesting.
It is interesting. I think that a lot of the times in development and engineering now, AI is going to be like this dumb, smart person where a lot of principles that we've learned as engineers, like a lot of the best practices become more important, but then some of them fall off. Like you say, I think it'll be interesting to see what are the things that either we hated doing or we're like, why do we do this thing? Linting, for example. I think linting is more important now than ever to have a consistent code quality across your code base so that, if the model like Claude is trained on properly linted JavaScript code, it's going to be more able to recognize and create high quality code in a code base that's linted well, it's formatted well, versus, some one-off rules. And it'll just be interesting to see how that development process changes over time.
It does. Yeah. And your preference as someone who I initially, when I've been going for years. When I was doing JavaScript and TypeScript was just taking off, and I was very resistant to TypeScript. Eventually, I got into it, kind of liked it, but I was never the guy who would make crazy types. But with AI, it actually is so powerful. Actually, because it it makes it so much more effective because it understands the types, and it'll make the first naive edit, and then it'll say, oh, there's an error, it's a type error, is because this field, and so it auto corrects itself. And that is why TypeScript is so powerful compared to a language that's not typed in terms of AI editing. It's and it's certainly having crazy types, like, because I'm not writing those types, I'm not like going in and spending hours trying to perfect the type. It's just doing it itself becomes so much more powerful. So these kind of things, is just I guess what we're trying to say is, like, you gotta approach everything with a fresh mind, and let go of a lot of past behavior. Look at it and be like, does this still make sense? How would I do it if I started today, etc.
Totally. And I know we just went on a huge tangent for everybody watching here, like types, TypeScript, all this stuff. So if the last like 2 minutes, 5 minutes was like a riff, that was for the fun of me and Bilal, and we just like that banter there. But I want to fully emphasize this is like what you knew pre 2022, everything you knew about business, everything that you knew about marketing, everything you knew about engineering, everything you knew about all these different things, everything's changing. Everything's changing. So throw all your preconceived notions, all your priors out the window, and except for the things that you're 100% certain don't get impacted. 100%. You have to be 100% certain. But everything else, it's going to be changed. And so just, I think, accepting that change of process, accepting the change of how things should be done or how things have been done in the past, everything's changing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that most people are resistant to change. Most people think that based on my experience in the past, this is the way things have been done. This is the way I've done things. And it's very hard for people to recognize the fact that, yes, that's true. But going forward, that might not be true anymore. And you have to be okay with the uncomfortable truth that things are changing faster than they seem. So it is fascinating, Eric. So Eric just said it's fascinating. But I mean, I know we're over time. And that was a little riff too. But this was a fun one. I don't know. I always thought that maybe like we do at least I thought it'd be fun to do like we have Weekly Wednesday, which is JellyPod, and then another thing, either us three or me and Bilal, because I want to talk about technical things sometimes too. And at least like there's all this stuff about Google I/O that happened this week, like VO, Imagine, Flow, all these cool things that I think would be fun. I think we have cool opinions about this stuff.
And we'll hopefully be leveraging a lot of that,
Yeah,
for sure.
So cool.
Fun
Cool. I think should we end it here?
Yeah, it's a good stuff.
Love it.
You have any last thoughts? Sorry, we just like.
No. I love. No. When I see when I see a snowball rolling down a hill, I get out of the way. But all right, everybody, thanks so much for listening in, and go ask ChatGPT what half of those terms that they dropped were. And besides that, we'll see you guys all next Wednesday, and keep messaging support, keep asking for things. We're trying to build as quickly as possible.